Yev. So good
Good
to see you.
morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you too. So you are 3 days out of your 2 month sabbatical. And I'm super excited to just capture this this mood that you're in and your reflections because it's so close and early out of this wonderful experience that you've had. I guess I'll leave it to you to just provide a little bit more background and paint the picture of how you even started thinking about taking a sabbatical.
Well, I appreciate you prompting this. I think it's a wonderful way to capture and memorialize and reflect on the experience. It really came about almost a year ago, actually, in the fall of 23. It was occurring to me that our firm was about to hit its 10-year anniversary, and I have been practicing law consistently for 18 years. And a lot has happened in my personal life. And I think the constant during all of that time was just how steadfast I was in my commitment and grit with respect to my clients, building this firm and the work. And it started to occur to me that I really haven't taken any time for myself to back off full throttle and reflect on where I've been, celebrate, and start to think about the future. I also went into this thinking we were able to achieve most of what I had conceived of as part of a 5-year moonshot strategy or set of goals. And we were a few years late in achieving it, but by achieving it, we kind of outlived an initial vision for the firm. And I thought, oh gosh, if I'm going to remain in a leadership position and continue to inspire and motivate our team, our organization, and the various communities that we work with, it's real time to start thinking about another vision, another chapter, and think even bigger. And I needed space away to do that. I was so deep in the weeds and really just, I'll leave it there. I was so deep in the weeds. I knew that I didn't have the resources I needed to step back and do that work.
I wanted to congratulate you on 10 years of the practice and it being you being so successful, you cultivating such a wonderful, dedicated team that was able to support you as well during this absence. And that is really most commendable to be able to grow that, to nurture that, and to be able to walk away, trusting those that you've left behind, and then trusting the systems that have been built, the legacy that has been built enough that it will be self-sustaining. That is really, really something to be proud of.
Thank you.
How did you prepare them for it in leading up to the sabbatical?
So I wanted to also acknowledge and thank my law partner, Jacqueline, actually initiated, really planted this seed. This has been a dream, I should say, for a few years, but it didn't become a realistic possibility until Jacqueline said, I really think you should do this. And didn't say, I think you should think about this. She said, I really think you should do this. And she painted a broader picture of the benefits for not just me, but for the firm. So we really started planning in earnest in about October, November of 2020. And so just for context, the sabbatical started May 9th, 2024. So we started planning a good 6-7 months in advance. And that began with me taking really a lot of time to think about, am I ready for this? What do I need to be ready for this? We were coming up on a year of Jacqueline being in this new role of partner. And I had to just begin to really interrogate my beliefs and my shadows a little bit to understand, what concerns, if any, did I have? What areas did I need to see growth in for both me and for the team? What were my goals? And I really began to put pen to paper about February of 24. So I drafted a full sabbatical plan involving my objectives, what sort of activities I thought I would participate in. And it was nice to tear down the wall and look at this both from a personal, relational, and professional standpoint. what sort of needs I would have, what sort of needs the team would have, what domains they would fill in for. And we began with that, and we drilled down into each of those categories. And by about March, we started communicating with all of our clients, and we developed an incredibly detailed and robust plan for having team members substitute as lead attorneys in my stead for any client with whom I was the initial and primary point of contact. And we prepared them with written notices. We communicated and gave everyone a chance to meet with the other member of the team. We had already really hefty systems for cross-training and for communication with all of our kind of client management software. We were able to really seamlessly bridge that gap. And so we were really fully prepared by, frankly, early April. And so I spent a good bit of April really just kind of winding down and coasting into the sabbatical because we had ticked off all of our to-dos. So the planning took a long time. The execution of the plan felt rather straightforward. And it was not, it was, I mean, without the encouragement of the team, this would have been much more difficult, but everybody was so incredibly they accepted and relished the challenge. There was, of course, anxiety and uncertainty, but folks really relished the challenge. But in earnest, we started planning at the beginning of 2024.
It does take quite a bit of planning, and just having some of the inside view as of counsel as well to the firm. I've seen that play out, and it's been very, very intentional. So I think that is really important to highlight, that it does take some planning, and also, just as another reflection, I know that Jackie was stepping into this new role, so it was such a fundamental way for her to be able to find her own management style and voice, and just the perfect opportunity. So your ability to be able to step aside and have her lead in this way really, massively allowed her to just grow within herself and do that. So I think that's incredible as well, and very unique.
Yeah, I want to commend Jacqueline. I'm incredibly proud of how upfront she was about that. She frankly came to me and said, look, I think there's a limit to how much I think I can demonstrate leadership and grow while we're, essentially, as long as things are the way they are. And I think my presence has, casts a long shadow. And Jackie really invited me to view this in a different way. And that happened to coincide with my absolute confidence in her ability. And I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. You are totally ready for this. I have absolute trust and confidence. And that took me having to, again, step aside. And when I felt ready to do it, it was an easy thing to do. I was actually surprised at how easy it was to step aside and not even wonder what might come up. How will she handle? Zero hesitation on my part. I felt inside. And it was a joy and a pleasure to watch Jacqueline really spread her wings. And I really believe that it did require me to step out of the limelight and out of day-to-day presence for her to demonstrate her leadership capacity and competence, and for the team to look to her and look only to her. So it was an opportunity that I don't think one of us couldn't have done it alone, but I needed Jacqueline to really say, hey, I want this and I'm ready for this. And I really commend her for that. And I think that has a broader implication for our practice as more women step into leadership positions. And as men have to recognize that, that requires us to listen and to step aside and make space. And I'm just so thankful that it was easy to do. I mean, it was easy for my part to do, and I'd like to think that even if it were hard, I would still have done it. But I have an enormous amount of respect and admiration for Jacqueline's tenacity and capability. She really made this easy.
That's wonderful. Now you both have very much a yin and yang aura to you that works for the firm and is really felt by the whole team. I certainly felt it, but also the fact that you are able to give so much grace, and I think not just to Jacqueline, but to all of the team members, and just having worked with you for the last 4 years, you really give them the pedestal and empower them, and that's one of the beautiful things about your leadership style that I think is very unique, and I've certainly not encountered that before.
Thank you.
Switching gears a little bit, how did and when you did sort of close down your computer on day one of sabbatical, how did you set your own goals for this period, right?
Yeah.
To me, and I've asked you this before, it seems like it could be very daunting. You want to get so much accomplished, but at the same time you have these days of void that can pass by so quickly. So how are you able to kind of set these goals, keep yourself in check, and really feel like you're either getting the most out of it, or you're really like saturating in the relaxation as well, to that kind of allows you to regenerate and come back at 100%?
My first impulse was to set achievement goals. I wanted to write a novel. I wanted to complete certain things. I wanted to start maybe new hobbies or something. And it very quickly dawned on me that I wasn't resourced for that. And in fact, one of the primary purposes of a sabbatical is to rest and recharge and detox in a way that is not available to us in everyday life or even on a long vacation. Certainly 1 week, and not even a 3-week vacation, could have given me what I really needed. And to accomplish rest and relaxation, everybody's different. And my version of it certainly is not how yours would be or others would be. There was a phase of decompression that is very challenging. And I think it's very hard for folks in our profession who are so driven and type A and achievement oriented and status oriented. And so much of our identity is tied to our skill or what we get out of the practice of law, that I really needed to allow time for that separation to happen. I was frankly surprised how quickly it happened. I think I'd done a lot of preparation over the last few years to allow that to detach. It was like a boat, unmooring from the dock, and it frankly happened on Monday. I was so surprised. I was actually anxious going into sabbatical. I thought, will I really be able to let go? Will I feel lonely? Will I feel bored? What will I do? And I knew I needed to just relax. My goal for week one was just like, do as little as possible and rest. And come Monday morning, I think I dropped my kids off at camp, and to my surprise, I felt totally at ease already. I didn't feel rested. I felt totally at ease. I felt I had a place, and I felt supported. I didn't feel those things my anxiety told me. And I think my anxiety was a symptom of where I was emotionally at that time. I was severely burnt out. I've been describing it as a real emotional sickness. I felt the toxicity was wearing on me by that point. And so I really tried to just relax and decompress. I went for a lot of walks. I tried not to take on and start a lot of new things. I waited, I think, a good 1 to 2 weeks before I really started anything. But I did have some goals in mind. I took on a pretty significant construction project at my house that involved me doing a lot of the work and general contracting. And I knew going into this that I really needed that kind of challenge. I needed to work with my hands and move my body. But I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't going to stress me out. And so I had some goals. I had plenty of people around me that I was able to really focus on. And I sank into a really good rhythm. It took about a month, really. And it took the whole arc of the experience actually has different chapters marked by a month. So that it took a month to really settle into where I was. And then, I could really kind of get into it. But it turns out that I eschewed any real, again, achievement goals for myself. I did not even start a novel, and I'm proud to say I didn't start it. I didn't even complete my construction project. It's about 2/3 done, but I have a totally different attitude and really totally different perspective on it, on anything I start now, given the way I experience the sabbatical and this project even. The arc of time, I hope I can maintain, feels different now.
You mentioned, that you've sort of been preparing for this for the last couple of years. And I'd love to hear more about what kind of preparation you've taken on, and maybe generally like how people can prepare themselves for it, both mentally, both. I mean, you've sort of set the scene on how you can do that with your stakeholders and internally with the firm, but I think it does take a lot of just internal work to get to this place as well.
Yeah, it does. And I don't want to intimidate anyone into thinking this is an insurmountable challenge. It takes years to prepare. It just so happens that we were preparing for this kind of inadvertently for a couple of years. And so I think that's to say this was a lot easier because of those systems and practices we put into place. So a couple of things. One is we're a highly collaborative environment, which means that whether we need to or not, we try to have redundancy built into all of our client matters. That means that there are at least two attorneys familiar with the client, familiar with the matter, and often actively working on that matter through some kind of division of labor. And that ensures, should there be a vacation or family need, there's always somebody with knowledge who can kind of pick up and staff the matter. We have tools and systems in place to support that collaboration. We have client management systems and communication systems that allow us to be really seamless and fluid with that communication. We've practiced open book management and full transparency for several years, which means that everyone on the team has full knowledge and understanding of not just their specific workload, but the broader domains that affect their work and that they and their work will affect. And so that means everybody's conscious of the major drivers of the practice, from business development to how do I do this specific task, or how do I engage with this problem, and who knows this substantive area of law, to billing and invoicing. And so everybody's conversant with all the facets of the business, and that makes it a highly resilient organization. I think I inadvertently trained everyone to do what I did in such a way that I rendered myself unnecessary. And I don't say that in the way that I'm not helpful or wanted, but I made it so that I was not integral or vital to the continuity of the firm's day-to-day operations. And that was a goal I had many years ago when my kids were born, because I knew that in order to keep this going, I needed that continuity. I needed support. And it took a lot of time and effort to train people and find the right people, but it's been a blessing. It's years in the making, and here we are reaping the fruit of all that investment. And I like to think that, I mean, probably me taking a sabbatical is the hardest, will have the most impact on the team. Anyone else, I think, would have a lesser day-to-day impact, given the number of domains and the presence, or the ways in which I impact the firm's operations. And so I think all that work has really come to bear, and it's a real lesson that investment in people, that investment in things beyond just their specific areas of expertise, pays off when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the resilience of the firm and to the growth of the firm. There's so much more capacity than any of us really recognized before I went out.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And again, that just goes to building out these systems and being very intentional about them from the start of you building out your firm. But I also, just wanted for you to touch upon, and I know we've spoken personally as friends, more in the line of you sort of curating around you people that are talking about some of these issues that are coming up outside of work. Maybe some are lawyers, some are non-lawyers, and just finding these kind of social groups that are supporting, and allowing you to sort of be really honest with your feelings, because this profession is, it takes you in, chews you up, and spits you out, and a lot of really, really talented folks just don't know how to work themselves back into it when they've gone through that cycle. So I'd love for you, if you're willing to share, some of these groups that you've curated for yourself, and anything else that you can share in terms of self-development.
Absolutely. I think this is the most critical challenge and opportunity facing our profession. It starts in law school, and it brings me a visceral feeling to recall what it was like in law school in my early career, shedding many, many aspects, important aspects of my identity when I showed up to work, and that I was expected, or I expected myself to be a certain way. And that I knew at a certain level was not sustainable or good for me, but I didn't know any other way. And so in retrospect, starting the firm was really an outlet for me. It was really a way for me to say, what would it look like to practice law and do what I love, do what I want to do in the way I want to do it, and not have to shed really any part of my identity. And it's been a saving it's been really the most important saving aspect of the firm for me. And I have made it my mission to demonstrate the safety within our organization for everyone to do the same thing, no matter what they're going through in their life. They show up as a whole human being each and every day. And the idea that they would need to compartmentalize or hide us or eschew a certain part of their identity is unacceptable. It's toxic. And I can say now on the other end of this, I remember the moment when I felt on sabbatical what it was like to reclaim all those other parts of my identity. Even as good as I've made it, even as good as I had it, I still had to abandon or subordinate parts of my identity, parts of what made me me and my humanity. And I can feel that. And I felt sick. I didn't realize it. That was the scary part, was how sick I felt. And I don't mean like I had a cold. I don't mean that I felt it. I felt emotionally sick, and I did feel physically sick. My body was sending me every signal that something's not right. And I remember what it felt like to feel the most like myself I've ever felt in my life. And I thought, gosh, this is such a gift. And this is now my renewed purpose and mission in leading this firm, is to bring that opportunity and bring that message to our team and to the broader community and to our clients, because that's what makes them their best. And I've had the opportunity in the last 3 days to give legal advice and almost to hear what's coming out of my mouth from a place of being fully resourced, rested, and fully me. And it sounds different and it's hitting different. I'm seeing from clients, I'm getting that feedback that it's something is resonating in a way that they've never heard from others. And I want that for people, because it shouldn't require us to be something other than our full self when we come to work. And I've seen that. It's not just a platitude. It's really, I've seen what people can be like when they're fully present, they're fully themselves, and even when they give themselves grace for being not fully articulate. I'm not having a good day. That is what it is. Again, this, we joke this is a practice of law, and that requires us to practice through all phases and in all ways. And sometimes that means I'm giving 10% today. Sometimes it means I can't even practice today. I need to take time, and all of that has to be okay, because we have to accept people showing up as they are in their life, whether that's a sick child, a sick parent, or somebody's just going through a major life crisis. And I'll get to why, how my priorities have shifted, but I really think that allowing us in this profession to be fully ourselves is really the only acceptable way that we should be training and reinforcing behavior. And that has to be not opposed, that has to be integrated and integral to success as a lawyer and effectiveness as a lawyer. There's so much diversity of personality and style, and all of that has to be cherished and welcomed in the profession.
Absolutely. And I know that you took a trip down to Bologna during your sabbatical as well, and that sort of reinvigorated or I guess cemented your understanding that you're in the right place, right? That you went to a center or kind of the center of the cooperative movement and thinking. And when you experienced that, that was sort of like just a reassurance that you're doing exactly, you're on the right course. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, I think I might have been listening to this was probably in like the second week of sabbatical. I was listening to an Adam Grant podcast, which are wonderful. And I was walking, and I thought to myself, okay, it's time to ask myself the big question: do I need a major change in course in my life, in my work, or am I roughly in the place I need to be and want to be? And it was very easy and quick to answer that question. I'm doing what I should be doing. I don't need to go change professions and be a carpenter or a dancer. I'm doing what I should be doing, and I'm passionate about this. And as you alluded, one of the goals of sabbatical was to reinvigorate my passion and re-inspire myself toward the work that we're known for, which is to develop cooperatives. And this is not just a practice area for us. This is a vision of our economy and our communities. That's something that is deep within me. And I had, I lost a little bit of connection to that. And that's why I say a part of my identity felt like it was that light had dimmed. And so I took this trip to reconnect, to gain inspiration and see new ways. And it helped that I speak Italian. And so I went and I visited, and I got to experience the near ubiquity of cooperatives in a thriving city, and to talk to the people who can tell me about how did they get there. There's a 160-year-old history in Italy that roughly coincides with the same time frame of cooperative development in the US, and yet they went about it in a really interesting way. And I was blown away at the commitment and the passion for not just the cooperative legal structure or the business model, but as a mode of setting up an economy. Roughly 20% of the non-governmental workforce in Italy is employed by cooperatives. Throughout the country, the largest insurance companies, banks, construction companies are cooperatives. Cooperatives exist in every sector and domain in the economy in Italy. And it comes from a particular ideology that unfortunately doesn't exist uniformly in the US. And I think, and it also comes from this notion of self-help. Italians don't really rely quite as much on the government for their, public services. They have this self-help mindset that we in our community can meet this need for ourselves. And that is actually part of the heritage of the American West. And actually, much of the American West is organizing cooperatives for electricity and banking and agriculture and production, and even at one point grocery. And we kind of have lost sight of that. And so I went there to investigate that question, like, what is the cultural landscape that has bred this cooperative? And I came back fully nourished, fully replenished, and really energized to get back to this work. I do want to jump back. You asked a question about what sort of support and what sort of groups I've cultivated around, mental health for myself and for lawyers. And I did want to specifically mention, there's no real need to jump through all these hoops to create or find something novel. There's so many wonderful groups. COLAP is a wonderful resource. The Colorado Bar Association has incredible mental health and mental health awareness programs. Ryan Payton is leading many of those efforts. The one that is particularly meaningful to me is I created a very small group of curated individuals who have founded and lead impact organizations, whether they're nonprofits, for-profits, consultancies, and some of them are actually clients of mine. And I created this group of about 6 individuals, balanced between men and women, balanced racially, ethnically, and we tackle the challenges that we face that we may not feel we can bring to and talk about with our team, our employees, or others. And so this is a safe space for us to get advice if we want to, just get support if we need to talk something through. And that started just as an informal idea. And it can start with just a group of friends. It can start with folks who have a commitment to self-awareness and personal growth, and who bring some skill to helping navigate challenges they're working through. And it's nice because one of our guardrails is no unsolicited advice. We're not there to tell everyone how to do things. We're there to work through things. And if there's advice to give, we'll ask, do you want advice? What do you need? And it's just a wonderful space. But it is something I've looked forward to. I come away very emotional, actually, each and every time, because I feel so connected to others going through similar challenges, even though none of them is a lawyer. I'm the only lawyer on the call. And it's just such an important place for me. And I think that everybody needs it, particularly lawyers. We have a very unique breed of stress, anxiety, and I think we need support. And many don't ask for it. And that, to me, is one of the saddest, most difficult obstacles to overcome, is to encourage everybody that there are people out there, and it just takes asking. And I've been overwhelmed with the amount of support that's there when you stand up and ask for it or say you need it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and then you and I have also spoken about creating similar sort of lawyer circles as well, of like-minded folks that are struggling and that need to find an outlet. And sometimes, you look for other groups that are entirely out of your profession, and sometimes it does help to just have that ability to express some of these issues with those that are going through it on a daily basis. So I think that you're right. These groups already exist, or otherwise, you form your own, and you curate what works for you as well. And I think that it's actually easier than we think it is. I think that
Much
just
easier.
knowing how many people are in the same spot.
Yeah, we have to recognize we have a common experience. We went to law school. Law school was difficult.
A common trauma.
Common trauma. I mean, I was going to go there and say, I think we should be calling that experience what it is. It's a traumatic experience to go through that level of stress and challenge. It doesn't have to be debilitating, but it is traumatic. Certainly the early years in the profession are, and it evolves depending on where you are in your career. And we should not be silent and alone with that. We have to talk about it. And I'm here as somebody who I think has really unearthed and accessed so much of it. And I'm doing my best to try to get past and transmute a lot of that into something positive, so that I can do this until I want to retire. I really feel committed to this profession and to this work for the long haul. And I think that we don't need just a way to talk about, but really move past it or move with it. It may never go away, but we can certainly channel it and talk about it. And, for us who have a common experience, there's no better way to, all it takes is kind of a head nod. Somebody gets it. Somebody in each and every one of our circles gets what we're struggling with. And we can absolutely honor confidentiality and, all of our professional obligations and still get support. And it doesn't have to be a challenge, really doesn't.
Yeah, agreed. So now that you sort of were able to cement your ikigai, right, which is purpose in Japanese, you have this glow to you, and how are you thinking about just maintaining that in your daily practice coming back out of sabbatical? And I know that it's, you want to bottle it, but then things erode, right? And the calls and the meetings and the day-to-day responsibilities and things that, you come back to and you're like, well, does it really feel like anything has changed? So what are some things that you're doing to sort of revisit that on a daily basis and make sure that you're weaving it through your daily practices?
Well, the first is, it doesn't take a sabbatical to have, a realization about what changes one wants to make in their professional life. I spent a lot of time reflecting, and I spent a lot of time realizing how sick I felt. And I spent the second half of sabbatical really asking myself, what needs to change? What do I want to do differently? And a couple things emerged, and they were crystal clear to me. One was multitasking was one of them, and enabling distraction was one of the things that was slowly hurting my mental health. I don't think it was an exaggeration to say that it was causing me a great deal of anxiety that was within my control. So I spent a lot of time really thinking, okay, what does it look like then to get past that? And what tools do I need? So I have new mantras written down beneath my monitor, and one of them is I'm dedicated. And these are goals. These are not rigid things that I'm gonna flagellate myself for violating. They have to be goals, and I have to treat myself with grace when I approach these goals. One is I'm gonna really focus myself on accomplishing or dedicating my energy to two. First thing, my time and energy are limited. I had forgotten that, and I had allowed myself to act as if time and energy were limitless. I have children, I have other things in my life, and by approaching each and every task and each and every client and each and every request as if, oh, I'll get that done now, I'll just get that done now, I was sending myself the signal that my time and energy are limitless. And therefore, when something has no ceiling, guess what? It's also valued lower, supply and demand. And I realized that was making me sick. My time and energy are limited. And by the way, valuable. And I wanted to dedicate them to things I really cared about. So I have one thing here. Do I want to do this? Whatever this is, the task, do I want to do this? The second question is this the highest and best use of my time and energy right now? Now, something might be the best use of my time and energy tomorrow, but not right now. So I said, okay, I really need to be intentional about my priorities and what has my focus. The other thing is I know that I have not been very good about guarding my time and energy. So I'm really setting a goal of trying to dedicate my time and focus to 2 to 3 things a day with real intention and without distraction. So I have taken to shutting off every application except the one I'm on right now. So right now, I don't have email, I don't have a web browser, I have nothing but this call and your questions on my screens. And I'm going to keep that going as long as possible. My email alone was chewing through 80%. It's like a CPU that's overheating because 80% of it is running in the background. And that was my brain. And that was my health. And my body was clenching up every time I saw something else come in. I was like, ooh, I see that in the corner of my eye. And for me, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to try not to. The other thing is I need to slow down. In fact, I listened to a podcast about slow productivity on this podcast called the Happiness Podcast. And it's by this PhD researcher. And she's turning the whole podcast on her own happiness and her own practices. And one of them is on slow productivity. And we have become worshipers of productivity, multitasking. And guess what? We're the sickest. We're the country with the worst mental health in the world. I just heard today that pediatric mental health is at a state of emergency. Kids are checking themselves into boarding facilities for mental health care. And I refuse to set that role model for my kids. So I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to slow myself down. I'm going to listen to what I need. And I'm going to do my best to act with intention. And I also realize as part of this, I talk a big game with boundaries and I talk a big game with these. And I'm not going to do that anymore, other than today. I have to practice this stuff. It's about how I behave that will really set the tone for the organization and will prove whether or not this has a lasting effect. So I'm on day 4. Each day I found something, some wellspring of energy to tap into. And that has energized me. And I think where that's coming from is I have to connect to something I could be present with. I'm present with you here today. I feel connected. And that could be with a client. That has been with a client. Actually, on Monday, I connected with a client and felt it was effortless. And that's, I think, what I want to harness that. I really just need to stay present enough to be aware of it. And then I can begin to harness it and work with it. And hopefully others observe it. I'm not going to change the tenor and practices of the other people within our organization or across the profession. But I hope that if I do it differently, it will appear different. And that's all I care about is, am I living true to how I want to behave and how I want to act going forward? And I know, as friends have told me, I'm going to make mistakes and I need to approach those mistakes with grace and humility. So I'm going to make a mistake. I need to recognize it and then I need to correct it. Sometimes that might be apologizing to somebody that I think I maybe overstepped what I'm able to promise and deliver, and I need to backtrack that. Or maybe it's, hey, I think I might have bitten off too much and I need to back off, or maybe I need a longer timeline with something. Or maybe I need to say, hey, I know I said I would do that, but it turns out that's not something I should be doing, and I need to either hand that back off or delegate that to somebody else. And I'll practice. That's all I can hope to do.
We are only human. I mean, you've lit the candle for taking sabbaticals in this profession, for me at least, and for what I've seen. I've not seen any other lawyer take a sabbatical. I know it's very well accepted in the education space. How can we normalize this a little bit more? And I know that you said you don't necessarily need a sabbatical to come to a lot of these conclusions um, and make these changes in your practice and within yourself. But it does seem like just stepping away entirely is massively beneficial, exponentially
Huge.
beneficial to just having the acuity, like professional acuity, personal acuity, as you mentioned. So do you have any thoughts on how we can make this more normalized? And I know that, again, just the way that you position this with clients and within the team, the messaging about the firm's history, about where you're at, that was a great example. So maybe just having, I guess, more discourse around how that could take shape, right?
Yeah, again, I don't want to intimidate anyone in thinking that all these preconditions have to exist before this is even feasible. I think it can be much simpler. And I think the first is to interrogate one's own limiting beliefs. What's standing in the way of me imagining this? What's standing in the way of me wanting this? What's standing in the way of me making this a priority? Spend some time with that. I mean, I think we all have limiting beliefs about what's possible. I think the next thing is to say, what resources do I have that make this possible? And there may be few, there may be many. The next question is, what would I need to make this possible? And guess what? This is the beginning of a plan. And what you might need to make this possible is, it may look different. I took roughly 3 months. It was about 10 weeks. And for someone else, that might be a month on, a month off, another month on. It might be, I need to just go to a silent retreat for 10 days. It will look different for everybody, but I think we have to ask ourselves these questions first to get to what is possible and what is feasible. And that's going to look different for everybody. Certainly, the more resources you have at your immediate disposal, say the bigger firm you're with, there are more resources to make this available. And I actually know firms. This was what told me first that this was possible was Hutchison Black & Cook is the oldest running law firm in Boulder. And they had a sabbatical program, I think, once somebody had been there 10 years. And I think it was either 6 months or a year, and I can't remember. But I remember as soon as I started as an in-house counsel, our outside counsel was about to go out on sabbatical. And I was thinking, this is incredible, because I thought this was only in academia. And he took his family and they lived in Europe for 6 months and, taught his kids European history on the ground. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. So I had this idea, again, already that I challenged. I got to the last 15 years of my career been without the limiting belief that this is impossible in our profession, because I saw it. So I think the first thing is to say, hey, look, it can happen. I'm here to say that whatever limiting belief you or anyone else has that this does not happen in the legal profession, I'm here to say it does and it can. And I think asking oneself, what resources do I need, begins the conversation about thinking outside the box. Because it may look like affiliating with other lawyers in your network that may not be part of your practice. And there are ways of doing that. And I can't answer every set of circumstances, but I think that it really will require a degree of prioritization. And so, if this is something that resonates, then I think it will take some creative thinking to figure out the logistics. And I honestly, I Googled like how to take a sabbatical. And I got all these really creative, interesting responses, and people did it so many different ways. And so the idea that it even needs to look a certain way is a limiting belief. So lawyers are used to thinking analytically, often in terms of black and white. And I think the very first thing is to allow ourselves the possibility that that may limit our imagination in terms of how this could be possible. And again, it may be 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And the other limiting belief I had was that clients would not tolerate this. They would leave. Or that clients were so attached to me, they would not call my coworkers. I'm here to say both of those were self-imposed limiting beliefs. I've overcome that. I've been gone long enough that I can say confidently, no client circumstances depended solely on me. I was gone long enough to extinguish the possibility or the need that I and I alone could solve their problem. And that gave me a great deal of confidence to say, if I can do this, other members of our team can do this. And if I can do this and other members of our team can do this, I think other lawyers can do this. And I had clients, actually, clients were far and away the most excited and the most proud and the most encouraging of this. That surprised me. Despite them having needs, they were like, this is amazing. And they internalized it. Some of them said, I knew not to contact you. I contacted other people, but I knew. So I was blown away at the level of support. Clients said, I don't know Jason that way, but he needs this. I'm going to honor this. And I felt that support throughout my, broader client community. And I had to run a list, and I was working with 30 to 60 clients. And as far as I can tell, not one of them, not one of them had some catastrophic event or crisis that could not be solved by themselves, another one of my teammates, and others. So I have a tremendous amount of confidence in my team, but I have even more confidence that I can step away and they'll be fine. They might even be better off. That's another new belief I have, that they may actually be better off having access to now other, fresh perspectives and other team members of mine. And I didn't once worry that, I'd lose clients. I think we've gained, if anything, we've had plenty of new business come in, and I'm not worried about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly inspired me in seeing that this is possible, and this can work, and just really challenged my paradigm, because like I said, I have not experienced this before, and this is indeed possible. It works. And you've just come in with a whole different energy back to the team, and the team feels that, and they're also inspired. And you've always inspired the team to do these types of things, whether it's taking more time off or pursuing their own self-development courses, needs, and that again is a very unique leadership style. So I'd like to conclude with a quote that I heard on my son's audiobook from Marcus Aurelius, and maybe just have you share a couple of final closing thoughts. And the quote goes, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness."
That's such a powerful idea. And it makes me think of a very short story. So I started the firm actually while I was teaching an MBA class. And on the final day of class, I went through this exercise with students. It was a business law and ethics class. And I had them go through this exercise, and I used very rudimentary drawings to visualize this. And I asked the students to think about sitting at their desk on the last day of their career and opening a letter that they have written to themselves today while they're, just graduating an MBA program, and to ask, what would it look like to be proud of what they did as a professional and as a person? And one thing that occurred to me late in sabbatical was I found out a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, is now in treatment for throat cancer. And I also got some news about a family medical crisis. both of which reminded me that life is precious and our time and energy are limited. And I'm not going to wait until I am retired or on my deathbed or worse, dead, before I reflect on whether I did the things that really gave me meaning. And I'm going to ask that question of myself now while I'm fully here and healthy, and while I have time ahead of me to make changes and focus on the people who matter most to me. And some of them are teammates, and some of them are clients, and some of them are people in my life who, as it turns out, give me a tremendous amount of love and support and energy to do this work, which is taxing and hard. And I'm not going to wait for that. So I'm going to make those choices at least as often as I can. I'm going to make that a priority of mine, and I'm not going to wait. And this shuffle in priorities, I think, is better late than never. And, you know, it also brings to mind that youth is wasted on the young. And I've been blessed to at least have this opportunity now, and not when I'm, 60 or 65 and retiring. And so there's no better gift than taking the time to really ask myself what matters to me while I have the time to make the changes to focus on those things. And as it turns out, the work I do is part of that. That brings me joy and meaning. But I am going to ask myself if I can do that in a way that continues to bring me joy and meaning. And I'm going to ask for support in the ways that it doesn't. And I'm going to encourage everyone around me to live their full life and be a full human, even if that takes them away from their computer and away from work, because I know that's going to make them happier and fuller and more present when they're here. And to ask anybody to either overextend the professional part of them or to compartmentalize the human part of them or the human relationships in their life is only a recipe to show them the exit door. And I refuse to do that. And I'm certainly not going to allow myself to do that. And I think those are, these are dire invitations and warnings to think about what matters. And I know that it's trite. Everyone has some experience in life at some point. I think what better gift than to have that question asked of me now than later.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And this is a true gift for you, being able to do it for yourself. And I think it's going to have a tremendous amount of impact on so many other people, just knowing that it can be done, your reflections, and I don't know, everything that you've exuded in this discussion today, I don't know, just shifts my perspective so much. So even if you've had an impact on anybody, it's definitely been on me. But I'm confident that and trust that there's so many people who can benefit from hearing about your experience, and that it'll, strike something in them as well. And we need that for this profession. We need this profession to be mentally healthy and really like true to what we set out to do, which is balance justice, right? And be defenders of justice, especially during these trying times. So thank you so much. And I adore you, and I'm so grateful to be in your circle and have benefited from learning from you as well as a teacher.
Right back at you. I appreciate the invitation to do this. I appreciate your curiosity and support, and just you as a human being. And I've gotten to learn so much from you, and can't wait for
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.